Okay, so I was gonna make a video earlier because the last video I made, I had gotten halfway to finishing the Gate of the Feral Gods, and now I just finished it. And I was gonna make a video in between, but I didn't have that much time, and I have a lot to talk about. Even before that, at the halfway point of that, I had a lot to talk about, and now I have a lot more to talk about because there's a ton of other things that happened. The epilogue of the Gate of the Feral Gods is one of the most interesting things. I have a lot to talk about with that, but there, the book is really interesting, I think. I don't think it's as good as some of the other ones, to be completely honest. Although the rating is higher on Goodreads, this book, than it is for some of the others. I think this book is a little bit stranger. I think this book is probably setting up things that are going to happen later on with the Gate of the Feral Gods and stuff like that, even though that was kind of opened and you had some of the Feral Gods popping bubbles in this book. I didn't get as into it as I did some of the other books. I think there were moments in some of the other books that I was looking forward to more. Like in the last book, or in the second book, it was their race selection and their class selection, and I was really looking forward to that. And in the last book, the book was confusing. The Tangle was a mess, but I really enjoyed certain moments in that more than this. I felt like there were certain moments in the Tangle that were kind of cooler and had me on the edge of my seat a little bit more than this book had me on the edge of my seat. Now, there were a few things that happened that I thought were really cool and really interesting. But again, I don't know how much this kind of kept me really on the edge of my seat for certain things. I want to talk about a few things before we really talk about the end of the book. The first thing is that Lucia Marr has killed 3 people so far in her life in this game, like 3 real life people, which I think is great. Lucia Marr, again, I am convinced that Lucia Marr is not crazy, not as crazy as everyone makes her out to be. Now, in the end of the book, Carl overtakes her for the number 1 spot on the leaderboard, but I do 100% think that Lucia Marr is going to come back, potentially in the hunting grounds or maybe in the next level, and her and Carl are going to kind of partner up and just start dominating people. I would kind of love that. I would like to see a little partnership between Lucia and Carl. I very much think that she's not crazy. They had like a moment where she was weeping over something, like she just had like an emotional breakdown. So I think that she's great, and I'm excited for their meeting. There are other moments that happen, like Maggie in the brain worm. She essentially finally gets taken out and she gets just demolished, but she was taking over the rock guy before that, and that plot line was interesting, but it like wrapped up almost too strangely. I feel like Maggie is still out there, kind of hunting. I don't know really what's going on there, but I don't know. And that kind of pertains to the end a little bit, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But so he wins this boss battle. He wins a few boss battles in this little section, and none of those really stuck with me all that much. I have to admit, like halfway through this, I thought there were really interesting things going on. After he kills his boss and lets out things, he becomes a devotee of one of the gods, and he's starting to worship one of the gods, which the Anarchist Cookbook told him not to do, but he's doing. I feel like that's going to come back later and pay dividends for him in some way. And then Carl, he also got these pictures of the women who filed a lawsuit against him, or the mothers of the women, or the mothers of the people who filed a lawsuit against him. Like, the stuff that's happening outside of the dungeon is strange to me. I don't really fully understand it, but I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's just like kind of far beyond my understanding. Like, one of the things that I want to talk about in the epilogue, maybe I just didn't get this early on, but I thought that people who entered into the dungeon were really the only people who were left on Earth, and they're the only people who survived. And now in the epilogue, it's essentially like there's little colonies of these little cities that they're still alive, and Beatrice is still alive, and Brad was still alive until he used the gun, or I think they killed him. And Ferdinand is still alive. And Audette is going to seek out these people, trying to get them. I'm a little nervous and suspicious for Audette too. I don't know really what she's cooking up. I feel like I'm trusting her less and less. I would love for a moment where it comes out where like she is truly trying to help Carl. And maybe she's trying to keep Beatrice and Ferdinand away from them so they can focus on the crawl and continue dismantling it. But I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like Audette, for some strange reason, is not really on board with Carl and Donut. There's something else going on that I just don't know. I need more information for what Mordecai and his issue with her is. And potentially, I do think that there's a area where Odette is fighting with Carl, and she's fighting all these battles, like not necessarily to Carl's game, but to her own game to set people free and kind of blow this whole thing up. But I don't know. She's a really strange character. One of the biggest questions I have for this too is Agatha. She just keeps skirting down all of these levels, and she's barely leveled up. It makes me think that she's... I don't really know. I actually have no idea who Agatha is. At first, I was thinking maybe she is like just one of the normal universe people, like these aliens, or someone from a different planet or a different realm who was kind of brought to Earth and is just kind of surviving, and she just skirts down from level to level. I don't really know why she's so low leveled. And I like that he's created intrigue in that even from the first novel. Like, my question of who is Agatha just keeps popping up. And she just keeps going down levels and just is like, has her little shopping cart. And is really strange, but I just don't understand who she is yet or what her purpose is. So that's one of the things that I think is occupying most of my brain space. That and the Odette thing, I think. And then I think the best part of this book, I have to admit, is the setup that it gives for the next book. Because at the end of this book, Carl is essentially like, he has the ring, and he's saying to anybody who is going to the hunting ground, he's saying, come find me. I will be glad. I will be glad to kill you. And I think that's more and more people who are on this like bandwagon, more and more crawlers are fighting against them. And I 100% think that at some point, I don't think in the next level, but I would say probably the level after that, or maybe the next one, there is going to be like a full-scale NPC revolution. And I think the NPCs are going to stop fighting against them, and they're going to start fighting with the crawlers. So I'm legitimately curious if some of the NPCs, if there's going to be a level of like no activity, and they're going to have to just try to shake things up. So I definitely am curious to see what is going to happen with the NPCs. But I love the fact that these other crawlers are kind of fighting against the machine along with Carl, and that this is the most deaths that has happened in a crawl since like the inception of the crawl, which I think is great. Earth fighting back. We love a good Earth story. So I'm curious to see how things are going to progress. But Carl, right before he walks down the stairs, issuing a challenge to any of the hunters to just please come after me, because he's like, he'll take them out as much as he wants. I kind of like that, and it makes me a little nervous for the next level. And it's sad that Katya is kind of leaving them, but I think her mission is noble, and I think that's kind of smart and wise that she's doing that as well. But for Carl, it's going to be an action-packed next book, and I think I'm really excited for the next book. Probably the most I've been excited for another book in this entire series so far. Like, the books are really still fun, but this is one where I feel like I've kind of gotten hooked. Like, this one to me feels like a book that I kind of got lost in some of the bubble and some of the feral gods and really what was going on there. But there were funny things that were going on, like to Samantha, the head thing. She's going to kill her mother and ends up being her mother. And, that whole thing is kind of funny. There were fun little things that happen in this novel, but I think that this novel really does a good job of kind of making me intrigued about the next. And the epilogue is just so bizarre. I did not think that there were going to be people still left on Earth. And so when Beatrice is kind of still alive, and when they get Ferdinand, it just is so strange to me. And you have another, and also there's a different audiobook reader for that one, which is strange that the epilogue is a different reader, because it totally threw me off. I was like, are they reading a different book and they're giving me a preview of a different book? Because it was just completely out of, like, almost out of context, where I was like, what is going on here? And then it's kind of slowly revealed who these people are looking for. So that was really great, but I think the next level is going to be just really interesting and intriguing. And the whole idea that there's still people on Earth and that they're still kind of like little colonies and they're still just surviving is also really intriguing, and it makes me curious, because I thought you either entered into the dungeon or you didn't and you died. But I guess I was totally wrong about that. So Brad was an idiot. He was just like, I want to be a king, and he wished he went into the dungeon. But again, I thought that the dungeon was only for people who were, you either went to the dungeon or you died. But I guess I'm totally wrong about that. But all that to say, I'm really excited for the next book because I think the next book is really going to kind of spice things up. So that's all I got for you. A quick one. Or not really a quick one, like 10 minutes. But quick one on just kind of some of my thoughts. I'll make a few more for the next one. I just didn't have a lot of time. Maybe like I'll do like 4 videos per book or something like that. Just like, every quarter, just talk about my experience with reading it. But that's all I got. So make sure you subscribe. You can like the video too. And I'll see you in the next one.